Hey now, welcome back to the Deadology Podcast from Pencil Hill Studio, New Paltz, New York. I'm your host, Howard Weiner, and this is Season 3, Episode 2 of the podcast. Today is January 24th, 2025. And tonight we're going to head where the Deadology Podcast has never gone before. We're going to actually do a show from the 1990s. This one, most of you know, it's maybe the most legendary show from that decade. Branford Marsalis joins the Grateful Dead in the Nassau Coliseum, March 29th, 1990. And what a memorable, great, spectacular show that is. We're going to get into that. I'm going to do a little review of the Bob Dylan movie, A Complete Unknown, before we jump into the Branford show from the Nassau Coliseum. And also, I just wanted to mention that next week we'll be taking a look at the Eugene, Oregon show from 1978, January 22nd, 1978. Doug Schmel will be back joining us for that podcast. So that's going to be a good one next week. But this one is huge, the Branford Marsalis show. But first, let me start off with this Dylan movie, which was incredible. So I was a little skeptical about going to see the movie. You know, whenever I usually go to one of these rock biopics, whether it's the Bob Marley one, whatever. I usually find it a little disappointing, almost like I know too much about the subject matter to enjoy it as much as I should. And a couple of friends of mine said, "Hey, I've been living in a bubble. I blocked out all the trailers and reviews of it, but my friends were texting me like, this is a spectacular movie." And then to top it all off, my mother and brother went to see it. I think it came out Christmas Day. They went like right around that weekend. They don't know jack squat about Bob Dylan, and they love the movie. So I'm like, everything's covered here, man. Everybody loves it, so I have to go. I rarely go to movie theaters. I probably haven't been in a movie theater in 10 years. I took a gummy, snuck in a tall boy, and went to the New Paltz Cinema at 9:15. I saw this movie twice. I saw it Wednesday night, and then I saw it the following week on Wednesday night. Just incredible, man. It's about two and a half hours, something like that. Unbelievable, man. Just so impressive. And I'm going to mention a few things which I wasn't crazy about the movie at the end, but it's very close to a 5-star movie. First off, Timothy Chalamet. By the way, I know nothing about movies. I don't go to see movies. Have no idea about the other movies that are up for Oscars. And just the other day, this Complete Unknown for the Oscars, it's up there for Best Picture. Timothy Chalamet, who was brilliant, freaking brilliant as Bob Dylan, for the Best Actor, the Best Supporting Actress. And she was incredible. Monica Barbaro doing Joan Baez. I think she was even better than Ed Norton, who was spectacular as Pete Seeger. And the reason I say that, the Joan Baez character is pretty complex, a tougher character to capture. She was just unbelievable. But man, that Timothy Chalamet, great singing. He really got into the spirit of, kind of just embodied Bob Dylan from that period, 61 through about 65. So just top notch all the way. So, basically I think everyone I'm talking to out here, I'm speaking to the choir. Most of you guys know the story. This movie is very New York City, Greenwich Village, folk, Newport centric. It definitely stays within its boundaries. And the first, I'd say 75-80% of the movie, just touching, emotional, as great as a movie could be. I was, definitely poignant, couple tears, just moved by the performances and the history. And it's just spectacular movie. But like I said, we get about 3/4 of the way through, and then the movie just kind of slid just a little bit. When a movie's that good, and you notice it just takes a little bit of a dip. Obviously, in a rock biopic, you're going to get all kinds of made-up stuff. And in the part I loved, there was probably about 30 things I knew which actually didn't happen as they portrayed it. There's a lot of time out of mind where they took things that happened and put it in different contexts and things like that. And that was all cool to me. I was very happy with it. The movie totally worked until they reached the point where it's like where they show on the screen 1965, and then Dylan's got the shades on, and they're moving towards Newport 65. They made up these two scenes. One scene is they're introducing Bobby Newirth. They meet in an elevator, completely made up scene. And then Dylan gets punched at a bar. It did nothing to further the movie, lead to Newport 65. Not a great scene. I mean, when I saw it again, I liked it a little better. But if anything had to be cut from the movie, this could be cut. And I'm going to have a suggestion for what should have been put in there. And then the next scene is like Pete Seeger doing his TV show, and Dylan shows up late as a guest, and there's a made-up blues singer there. This scene didn't happen either. So they did two scenes where they really didn't do much with, which kind of like the movie plateaued at that point. So what I would have done, I would have cut those two out if I was involved in the screenplay. And the only issue is the screenplay here, because it's a 5-star all the way right till this point where it just hit plateaued a little bit. And for some reason, and I think it's because they want to stay folk-centric, New York City-centric, they didn't bring the Beatles in. Now, the infamous scene is where the Beatles and Dylan meet for the first time, and they're smoking pot in a hotel room in New York City. And there could be no better scene for a movie, especially this one, than in a biopic where you can make up the dialogue a little bit, than to have included that. Maybe they didn't want to pay for actors to do the Beatles. I'm not sure. It had to be kicked around. I'm sure they had to kick around the meeting as to whether they would include something like that. But that would have been the scene of the movie. I would have went to war if I was involved in that movie to get that done, because that would have made the movie just incredible, because the acting was so top notch. It would have been like the scene of the movie. I'm kind of surprised that they skipped out on bringing the Beatles in, because the Beatles represented where Dylan was headed. They do a great job of telling you, kind of portraying why Dylan wanted to leave the folk movement. That's done effectively, but you don't see what he's moving towards. That one Beatles scene where they're smoking pot in a hotel room in New York City, and this is the first time the Beatles are getting stoned, so there's all kinds of history here. That would have definitely set the stage for Newport 65 and worked much better than the scenes that were there. And of course, Newport 65 is a home run, slam dunk, great way to end the film. They even do a nice little made-up scene where Dylan visits Woody Guthrie for the last time, and then he heads off on a motorcycle. And obviously, if you know Dylan's career, he gets into the motorcycle accident not too long after that. So everything was done really well. But I think by skipping out the Beatles, that would be like watching Goodfellas, and they skipped out on the Lufthansa hijacking scene, or the big scene of kind of surprised that they didn't do that. But hey, we'll give it a 4.9 stars, man, and hopefully they win a lot of Oscars, because definitely deserving. Just everything, is cinematography, the acting, just brilliant. All right. And I'm going to see it a third time, I think, before it leaves the movie theater. So I definitely really enjoyed it. Now on to the featured show of the evening of the podcast. March 29th, 1990, Nassau Coliseum. At this point, I wasn't at the show. At this point in my touring career, I was down to maybe one show a tour at the most. I had kind of moved on to going to see Bob Dylan and other things. I'm in college, focused on having a good time. I didn't tour with the Grateful Dead during the 90s. I would just catch a show here and there. And I went to the Knickerbocker, I think it was on March. I could be off by a day or two on this. It was the 24th or the 26th of the last Knickerbocker show. Wasn't all that impressed. Now, if there's one show in my career that I should have been at that I regret not going to, it's obviously this Nassau Coliseum show. I had no idea Branford and Marsalis was going to be there. I knew he was the sax guy from the Tonight Show, but I really didn't understand how great of a jazz musician he was. But boy, if I could go back in time and do it all over, this is the show I would love to have been at. Now, of course, there's a lot of other shows that we could all say we wish we were at, but this is one I should have been at because it's a local show. I usually went to every Nassau Coliseum show, but unfortunately missed this one. So it's kind of at the end of the tour here, a couple of nights at the Nassau Coliseum. They open up with the Jack Straw, and this took me by surprise. I really was kind of blown away by how good this Jack Straw was. Maybe the best one I heard from this time period, 1990. There's a lot of good ones from 87, a couple of good ones from 88. But I think this was the best one I ever heard from this time period. So very hot Jack Straw. Jerry goes off on it. Off to a great start. Then we get Bertha in the second spot. Obviously a nice, desirable song. You could tell Jerry's voice is fading a little bit. He didn't have the best of vocal nights on this night. But you're off to a good start here. And then a Brent song. We Can Run. I think that's the name of it. I don't even know. I'm not looking at the set list. But a song from that built to last album, and if anything kind of it captures why I got out of the Grateful Dead scene is this song, and just Brent's songs were not that great. Brent was a great Hammond B3 player, tremendous backing vocal singer. But the Brent songs, think about it. What Brent song would you put in your top 50 Grateful Dead songs? I don't think anyone honestly could put one in there. So, and there's 4 songs on this built to last. So this was kind of why I was falling out of the Grateful Dead scene a little bit. Jerry's playing was a little diminished, too much MIDI stuff, and I just kind of and all this playing the same venues, big venues, tough to get tickets at the time. So when I hear this song, this kind of like brings out why I kind of left the touring with the Grateful Dead at that point. I had seen so much good stuff over so many years prior to it. So, 4th song, Decent Ramble on Rose. 5th song, Okay, Masterpiece. So this kind of had that feel of a show I wouldn't been that much into if I was there in 1990. Through 5 songs, the Jack Straw is really the standout. It's okay. Nothing's really happening. And then Bob Weir steps to the mic and says, "Hey, we got a special guest joining us tonight." And he looked around. He's like, "I think we do." And then he introduces Branford. Branford comes out. Branford's looking great. Silver shirt, black pants. And one thing I noticed when I was looking at the video, by the way, you could pull up a video of this show on YouTube. I believe the whole show's there. I've seen different parts of it. So they're coming into Birdsong, but Branford Marsalis was a pretty big guy because standing next to Jerry, he looked like a giant next to him. Branford must be about 6'2" or 6'3", and well built. So it just kind of stood out to me when he was kind of by Jerry. That he was a pretty big guy. And then they go into Birdsong. So this is Branford, what he knows of the Grateful Dead coming into this show. Truckin', Casey Jones, your basic FM rock and roll stuff. He knew they were a jam band kind of, even though the jam band genre really didn't exist, but he knew these guys jammed, but he wasn't really all that familiar with the music. So he's coming out and playing Birdsong, doesn't know the song, so he's got to listen and just improvise off of what the band's doing. And right away, Jerry's singing and Branford's just coming in with these beautiful fills, kind of responding to what Jerry's doing. And it's remarkable. And Garcia was loving it. You could just see this incredible smile on his face. Like the Grateful Dead knew they were getting a legendary jazz musician to jam with them. But once he started playing with them, I think it was better than either party could have imagined going into it. And Branford's just playing throughout the Birdsong, when they're singing, when they're jamming, and never stepping on anybody. It's amazing how a great musician like him could do that. He could just freely play throughout the thing, and it's never stepping on the music. So Garcia's loving it. When they go into the instrumental, Garcia's just got this big smile, and he's just like encouraging Branford, like, "Yeah, man, you got it. You're one of us, man. Come on, bring it on." And the other thing which I find amazing about this Birdsong, and I'm going to play a nice chunk of it for you right now, they usually a guest artist will come onto the stage with the Grateful Dead, and they'll be like, Jerry will play or Brent will do a solo. then the guest will come in, do his thing, whether it's Carlos Santana, Dickie Betts, whoever, even like Clarence Clemens, they'll clear out like a little space for a solo. They never had to do that with Branford. It was just like the solo, they would just be improvising back and forth. It wasn't like they had to clear out one spot for him. He was constantly in the music, and the band and they were just going back and forth. Like Brent would play, Jerry would play, and they just kept responding to each other instead of one musician taking off. So it's really, what we have here is quite unique, really tremendous. And I think it's, for a long time, Jerry was trying to get that perfect kind of sax, flute, get some jazz instruments in there to work with the band. And this is by far the best it ever worked out, and you could tell right away this is the perfect fit. So enjoy a little bit of this Birdsong from the March 29th, 1990 show in the Nassau Coliseum. Cool stuff. Unbelievable first appearance for Branford and Marsalis with the Grateful Dead. I was watching an interview with Branford. I'd seen this before. I seen it last night. I think it came out approximately 10, 15 years after he did the show with the Grateful Dead. He still looked very young in this interview. He was wearing a Mets hat. And Branford talked about how this show was better than any of the other shows he did with the Grateful Dead. He said there was something about this show, and it was definitely magical what was happening on stage as Branford and Jerry are trading licks there. Underneath it, you got Phil and Brent improvising off of it. There's just like these layers of improvisation and just floating around, and nobody's pushing the issue. It's not like a traditional jam where one person steps up, peaks. It's just like the whole thing is just fluttering and floating out there, and it continues on for like another 6-7 minutes. So it's a very long bird song. I mean, there are definitely, the Grateful Dead played some better ones throughout the years for sure, when they have that like linear purpose of, just bringing birdsong to a peak. This one is just unique. Nothing like this bird song, or pretty much this entire show, what Branford and the Dead do here. It was, like a Twilight Zone moment of just musical mastery going on stage. And they would never be able to recreate what they did in the Nassau Coliseum on this night. And Branford affirmed that for me when I watched the interview again last night. He just, he was like, no doubt that Nassau, that first time we played was really special. So, cool bird song. The 7-song set comes to an end with Promised Land. And once again, like the opening Jack Straw, I was very impressed, very surprised by how hot the Promised Land was. The band was definitely invigorated after the bird song with Branford. So they very hot Promised Land to close the set. And you're actually looking at what at one point I didn't think was a great set as it was unfolding through the first 5 songs. But when you take into consideration, you got a hot Jack Straw, the incredible bird song with Branford, and the hot Promised Land. Hey, that's a great set, man. You'll take that all day. So one good set in the books, and here's where everything changed, and history was really made. All-time musical history on this night. Branford's, getting ready to leave. His thing was, he's played with Sting before. He does guest appearances here and there. He was happy with this. He was getting ready to leave. Phil came up to him and said, "Hey, man, you got to stay and play another set with us." The band was like, "No, you ain't going anywhere." I mean, in Branford, it's a big guy. They couldn't block the exits, but pretty much they would have blocked the exits if they had to, because they knew that what they had was just like magical. And Branford was like, he agreed to stay for the second set. So the beauty of this show is it never should have happened. Branford should, most cases, any other night, any other artist, they do their song, they're gone, that's that. What happened tonight was so special, the band felt it, and they asked Branford to stay for the second set, and he stayed up there and played the entire second set. They chose the right songs, and just what was to unfold was incredible. The Grateful Dead, they picked the right 3 songs. They had Branford, and they were like, whoever came up with the idea, whether it was in the moment they were calling the songs out, or because Branford was there, they came up with the set, the first couple of songs to kick it off, but couldn't have asked for 3 better songs to start the second set. So they open up with Eyes of the World. This is it, man. This is what's about to unfold, is some of the greatest music ever, perhaps the best spontaneous improvisation I've ever heard in my life. Now, especially the first instrumental. I've taken, like, many years ago, like, musical appreciation classes in college. I've taken some more advanced stuff, some Dylan studies and different things, but it started with like a music appreciation class. And I was just thinking, if I taught a music appreciation class, there would be 2 things the students would have to answer correctly to pass. Just 2 questions. What's the best 7-minute song of all time? Obviously, Like a Rolling Stone, Bob Dylan. What's the best 7-minute improvisation of all time? Eyes of the World, March 29th, 1990, the first instrumental with Branford and Marsalis. To me, it is that good. I mean, there's hotter jams obviously from the Grateful Dead, but this was just so spontaneous and everything that improvisation should be. So they get out there, they take the stage. Jerry starts Eyes, and right away Branford is just hitting these beautiful licks. He doesn't even know Eyes of the World. He's just listening to what the band's doing, and he knows how to play off it. I guess it's possible he may have heard Eyes of the World a few times, but this wasn't his thing. He really didn't know it. So he's out there, playing in between. Jerry would sing, and you could just tell that Jerry's listening. I'm looking at the video. He's listening to Branford, and he's after he sings and he hears Branford, you could just see the pleasure in his face. Like he's freaking out at how good it is. This is the perfect guest that the Grateful Dead ever had on stage. I mean, it's different. You get Carlos Santana out there, who's one of my all-time favorite guitarists. He goes out, he blows the crowd away with a couple of solo. It's just different. This was like Branford Marsalis in another lifetime, or in this, he was a member of the Grateful Dead right away. On this night, it worked. He was thinking and performing like the Grateful Dead. Somehow he was able to just to channel it immediately, which is just incredible. And so they're moving along. And what Jerry does here, after they get to they do the chorus, and once again, Branford's fills in between just make this. It's such a great version to listen to. And so they get to the first instrumental, and Garcia does the coolest thing ever here. He takes the first lead in the instrumental. It's about 90 seconds long. We're going to play this whole thing, obviously, since I'm boosting it up as one of the great improvisations of all time. And what he does, he's like, here it is. He's playing the guitar, he's setting the tone, but he's doing it mostly for Branford. He's like, here's the temperature, here's the texture of the song, this is the color, this is what it smells like, this is how you excel. In this one little 90-second thing, Jerry's not playing the hottest leads of all time, but they're completely melodic, and they're telling Branford, here's the DNA of Eyes of the World. This is what you need to know to do your thing. He plays it for the exact amount of time that he should play it for, which is, like I said, about 90 seconds. And then he passes the baton to Branford, and this freaking guy goes nuts on it, man. Branford is a genius. He listened to what Garcia did, and how he even did this, doesn't even make sense to me. But he played on sax. He played a Garcia solo. He did it. This is like Garcia in peak form. Branford just channeled that, even though he'd yet to hear it on this night. I listen to this every time I hear this. I get goosebumps. It's that freaking great. So let's jump right into this. Eyes of the World. This is right through the first instrumental.
lazy summer home. Ain't got time to call your soul and critic, no. Right outside the lazy gate with a summer home. Wondering where the nut-thatched windows seasons, evenings and songs of its own.
Branford Marsalis. Just first time with the Grateful Dead, tapping right into the mojo and delivering what I think is the best solo ever by anybody to join the stage with the Dead. That's the essence of what the Grateful Dead are, and he just hit it right on in that instrumental. And what the cool thing at the very end, after Branford blows a stack, Jerry comes back, lays out a few licks, and they get the call and response going, and then Brent gets involved in it, and it just incredible. Right after, it was like a perfect way to end, to do the little call and response trade-off between the three of them. And throughout the whole thing, Phil Lesh is just playing these amazing bass runs. So once again, just the waves and the layers of music here, incredible. Like you could listen to it 500 times, hear something new in it every time, just depending on what you're focusing on. So, and I like to share the first time I heard this. Obviously, I'm not at the show. Nobody called me afterward and said, "Hey, guess what? You got to hear what Branford Marsalis did." I got to be honest. I don't know how hip I would have been to what Branford did if I was at the show. I'm sure I would have got caught up in it. But I wasn't a jazz guy, and that's why this particular performance changed my musical life. So it comes out. It came out officially released not too long after the show, as Without a Net, which were a bunch of songs from this particular tour. It came out in September 1990. So I get the CD, and I'm listening to it. There's a couple of good versions on there. I actually like Victim of the Crime. A nice, hot live Victim of a Crime is a pretty cool tune, even though I didn't appreciate it back in the day. But this Eyes of the World is on there. And I heard it, and I heard Branford go off. I was like, what the hell is that? It blew me away. And so I had to do the research, find out who Branford was. I listened to that Eyes of the World. Within getting the CD, within a month or two, I heard it hundreds of times. It just, that first instrumental just kind of blew me away, man. So great. And they eventually released this a bunch of years later, Wake Up, Discover, something like that. And I'm going to do a quick check. So they released the show in its entirety. And it's right here on my phone. Let's see. I think it's right here. It's Wake Up something. Here we go. Is that Wake Up to Find Out? That's the opening Jack Straw. Where the hell's the title name? Wake Up to Find Out. I guess that's it. I could barely see it, but yeah, so they came out, I think this came out maybe 5 years ago, I'm guessing, as an official release. And just the recording of the new one is spectacular, so equally balanced. But I like the Eyes of the World from Without a Net better because just Branford gets turned up just a little bit louder in it, man. And just that Eyes of the World just blew me away so much that I was like, I got to get into jazz. So I bought a couple of Branford albums, and then I went on this tear of buying Miles Davis. Within 2 years of hearing that, I had over 100 Miles Davis CDs, and maybe my jazz collection might have been as much as 500 different jazz CDs. So I went completely nuts. I wasn't a jazz aficionado at all before that. I don't know that I'm a jazz aficionado now, but I listen to a lot of jazz. I like it. And once again, the Grateful Dead brought something. They turned me on to Bob Dylan, and now they turned me on to Branford, and in a much larger way, the world of jazz, where I actually went out and went nuts over Miles Davis and John Coltrane and Herbie Hancock and Dizzy and Charlie Parker. So this one performance turned me on to that whole world. I went completely nuts after hearing this Eyes of the World. And the funny thing about this Eyes of the World, I've listened to this first instrumental 5,000 times. From the second and third instrumental, I may have heard those maybe 100 times or maybe a few more. But sometimes I could just listen to this and stop right there because there's no way you could top that. So they do two more instrumentals, and Jerry's guitar work is actually better in the second instrumental, but it never hits the peaks and the momentum flow. If I'm talking about something that I feel is like the greatest improvisation I ever heard, if you're trying to follow it up, it's almost impossible, and that's what they were up against here. But the second instrumental is pretty long. Jerry's doing some nice rips, and Branford's playing off it. But that first instrumental is just inexplicable magic. So whatever follows can't even compare. So it's just they're playing. They're not shortening it up at all. They definitely jammed out that it's second instrumental. It's a nice long Eyes, and then they break into. They're going to keep the jazzy flow going here. They break into Estimated Profit. the perfect tune to go into. I'm so glad they did it backward on this occasion. So Estimated has such a jazzy feel to it, especially when you get to the outro after Weir does his falsetto, screaming, but all the way through it has like a reggae feel, but more than that, it even has a jazzy kind of overtone to it, and it was the right song for Branford and Marsalis to kick into. And after Weir does this thing at the end, he really goes off on it. Branford comes in with some nice stuff. Garcia follows. And Estimated Profit is like a funny song. I think, I personally speaking, I think I underrated it because I used to see it maybe more than any other song during the years I was touring. And as much as you love it, it's almost like when you're watching Estimated, or at least this is in my case, I'd be like, what's next? Is it going to be Eyes of the World, Uncle John's? It was almost like Estimated was the facilitator for the upcoming song, which would usually be a Jerry song. Besides Eyes of the World and Uncle John's, it also in 77 had a brief run introducing St. Stephen a few times, and that worked out tremendous. That was a beautiful combo. So it's it's almost like playing in the band. You could almost, maybe underrate's the wrong word, but almost take it a little bit for granted because it was there so much. But they were great tunes which would lead to bigger things, and the fact that they would lead to bigger things almost hurt its own standing a little bit. But what I'm trying to say is Estimated is a great tune, and it was the perfect tune for Branford for them to play with Branford. And they're going along after Branford goes off for a while. Jerry takes over, and the band knows they're leading him into Dark Star. At this point, whatever communication, whether it's just minds meeting or however the Grateful Dead communicated, they know they're moving towards Dark Star. Branford has no clue what Dark Star is. When they break into Dark Star, freaking Nassau Coliseum's going nuts, and just Branford recalled it. He was like, we're playing along, then all of a sudden we go into a new song, and the place goes apeshit, using his exact words. So he was blown away by the reaction to Dark Star. And the crowd at this point was out of their minds in joy, just because this is, you're getting the songs you want. And Branford really, it's hard for anybody to have been there, even if you didn't really know jazz music or know Branford, to not be touched by what you saw in that Eyes of the World to start to set off. So this is like some kind of amazing dream. It's like a show going on. Now they're into Dark Star. And in a way, it almost has that surreal feel, like if you were in the Amsterdam bar in 1981 and you were seeing the Grateful Dead with rented equipment, do Gloria, Turn On Your Love Light, that amazing show, Holy Goalie, in a little bar in Amsterdam, spontaneous Oops concerts, I guess they were called. But yeah, just like that total surreal feel, it had to be out there in the audience when they're hearing Dark Star. And it's actually that the playing is very good. Jerry's very hot early on in this Dark Star. Obviously, Branford fits in as he did all night effortlessly on whatever they were doing. So they get to the first verse. I think it's about 6-7 minutes. This is, I think, much better than most of the later Dark Stars. One Dark Star, which 10-26-89, I know a lot of people love that. That is good. I think I like this one just a touch better because of the Branford factor. But so Jerry sings the first verse, and then I'm going to play this part right now, a nice chunk of this Dark Star. And kind of what you get here, you feel like you're listening to a Miles Davis group. You got Herbie Hancock, Chick Corea, Wayne Shorter, John McLaughlin, Dave Holland on bass. They almost get like that sound down. It's just an incredible jazz Grateful Dead moment here, as Jerry's singing the first verse, and they go into this awesome jam of Dark Star. Wow, some Grateful Marcellus mind melt there. Yeah, this is another thing that took me by surprise. How hot this Dark Star was. The times I heard it, I never realized this is a tremendous version. Kind of the segment we just heard there, as I heard it again, it kind of has like an early '70s vibe to it. Man, the playing is like that intense with Branford and Jerry just filling up all that space. Very cool. And one other thing, I just did a little research on this. So they go Dark Star. Well, not research. I just I did a little calculation's a better word. They do Dark Star, drums, space Dark Star. So it's like one long segment of Dark Star, really. And it's 38 minutes long, which is pretty long. And most of it is Dark Star related. So yeah, very cool version. Very happy with it, and surprised when I listened to it again. It was especially that part right there. That was very cool. And also the first instrumental is good. Jerry's very hot on that. For me, this wasn't like a spectacular night for the Grateful Dead, or I should rephrase that. It was a spectacular night for the Grateful Dead, not a best ever for Garcia. You know, when the Garcia and the band are really on a roll, it's a little different, but it's just magical. And Branford, unbelievable on this night. So in a different kind of way, it's just one of those legendary nights. And the only point of the show where it tails off just a little bit, and I blame this more on the Dead. It seems like they ran out of a little steam. They picked the perfect segment: Eyes, Estimated Dark, and that long Dark Star segment. Absolutely perfect. And then kind of after they came back and did the second verse of Dark Star, you could almost feel like the little energy was gone, and end of a long tour, and they just wanted to wrap it up, do a couple tunes. They did the Wheel, some decent playing along with Branford in there, throwing stones, and one of the cool things which I like, which Branford did during this, he was kind of responding to Bobby's singing with his playing. So he was very attentive through this whole thing, man. He just loved it. He didn't like, I'm going to leave the stage now, I'll come back when they do the big song at the end, right? He was in there the whole way, man, just digging everything. So pretty good throwing stones. And they wrapped it up with Love Light. And I think the Love Light's the one letdown from this particular concert. When they cut to Branford, he does a very cool jam here. But they kind of went through a little quick. Garcia didn't do much. Weir did the falsetto singing at the end, which didn't work. Love Light's such a strange creature, especially when it came back when Bobby started doing it in 1984. Man, when they hit it just right, very exciting, really thrilling. Obviously the Pigpen versions are the best, but some nights they could just have you eating out of the palm of their hands with a Love Light. But more often than not, for some reason, it had a throwaway feel, like they just wanted to get off the stage kind of thing. And that's the way, unfortunately, it feels here. Now, one Love Light, which I'll point out, and because Branford's on this one, I think of this other one, which I love, the Summer Solstice, June 21st, 1989. And Clarence Clemens is playing with the Dead. The Dead are hotter on this night. I mean, Garcia's having a better night. He had a good night here, but he was having a great night on that Summer Solstice. I remember watching that on pay-per-view with friends. Actually, I saw it in New Paltz, man. I think it was the first time I got the Grateful Dead on pay-per-view. Had a party, and we had such a great time that night. Well, awesome Morning Dew leading into Love Light. So there was a lot of momentum going into the Love Light, where most of the momentum at this show had already dissipated after they finished the Dark Star. But what a Love Light, man. Just Weir singing, it was perfect. And the jams were dispersed, precise brilliance, man. It was like Clarence did a little solo, unlike what they were doing here with Branford, where it was just this beautiful interchange. Clarence, they're like, okay, you take it, Clarence. And he did a great little solo, and he handed off to Garcia, and Garcia was just rolling on this night, and he just nailed this. And then Weir finished it with a big rave off. Excellent Love Light. That once again, that's from the Summer Solstice, June 21st, 89. But at least Branford came to play on this Love Light. You know, when they turned it over to Branford, he cooked a nice couple of minutes of Love Light here, which the crowd clearly responded to. And luckily, they finished it off with Knocking on Heaven's Door. It was the encore, so it was a little quick after the big portion of the show. But the Knock on Heaven's Door, total justice. Jerry singing it, nice, slowly paced. And the cool thing, the last two songs here, Branford must know these songs. Love Light, obviously, and Knocking on Heaven's Door. So it's something that was ground he was familiar with. And it's a beautiful Knock on Heaven's Door. I'm going to play that as the whole Knock on Heaven's Door as the outro here for the podcast. So yeah, just a tremendous night. There's all kinds of videos for this on YouTube. A couple interviews with Branford, and you actually got videos from the show. I think there's a whole video of the show. I just coming into this, I just watched the Birdsong and Eyes individually. Definitely worth checking out. So definitely go check those out. The Wake Up to Find Out CD is brilliant, great recording, definitely worth checking out. So, hey, that wraps up the March 29th, 1990 extravaganza, one that changed my musical taste forever. Branford Marsalis, one of the coolest guys, and I mean, people from the Deadheads were actually somehow incredible, got his number and were calling him and thanking him. In a way, he laughed about it and enjoyed it, but a little too much, man. you didn't need to call him on his personal cell phone, but he was a good sport about all that. You know, very happy to be part of the Grateful Dead family, and he was honest, man. He said, he clearly said this was the show, man. Some nights he said it just imploded. So like, he knew they were on this night. This was different than other nights. So that's it. Grateful Dead, Nassau Coliseum, March 29th, 1990. Thanks for joining me again. Next week, Doug Schmel's back. January 22nd, 1978. We're going to time travel back to that incredible show in Eugene, Oregon. The Dead were full of fire, especially in early 78, I think. Well, Red Rock 78 is pretty cool too. But yeah, man, that Eugene show is awesome. I can't wait to dig into it again. And hey, my website, tangledupintunes.com. All my books are available there. Hey, if you have any suggestions for the show, want to comment on the show, obviously you can do it on the YouTube page or the podcast pages. But also, I'm happy to receive emails, catfishgarcia82@yahoo.com. Speak to you again next week. Thanks for listening. Peace out.
Come take this bench off of me. I won't wear it anymore. It's getting too dark to see. I feel like I'm knocking on heaven's door. Knock, knock, 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 knocking on heaven's door. Come take these guns to the ground. I won't shoot them anymore. No, the sun's setting down. I feel like I'm knocking on heaven's door. Knock, knock, 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 knocking on heaven's door. I can't shit them anymore. Sun is setting in western skies. People, I believe I must be knocking on heaven's door. Knock, knock, knocking on heaven's door. Knock, knock, knocking on heaven's door. Knock, knock, knocking on heaven's door. Just like so many times before. Knock, knock, knocking on heaven's door. Knock, knock, knocking on heaven's door. Just like so many times before.